Hello YouTube, this is Flights in Asia and this is the latest updates of the aviation and travel scene in the Asia Pacific for this week and today's episode of May 19. And this episode I will be discussing the developments going on with the quarantines and flight suspensions in the Philippines. Flights are going to be remaining grounded until the end of the month due to the announcement. I'll get to that, as well as other airlines that have made schedule adjustments and opening some routes. So I'll get to that, but first, the major headline of the Asia Pacific region has been the situation with Thai Airways. And actually, this just happened last week. The Thai government is asking for a rehabilitation plan for the heavily debted airline, and the airline that has been going through major financial difficulties the last few years. And this is for a possible rescue package from the Thai government. And in that, and I'm going to quote this. This is the Thai Transport Minister Saksiam Syokob who stated this and was quoted in Reuters stating, "quote." And this is by the end. This is an ultimatum by the end of May, so they have to submit it by the end of May. And in a quote by Transport Minister Syokob, "quote: If the plan is not finished in May, then we cannot proceed." Very simple. And in that plan, according to Siakam, mentioned that the plan must address the 23 risk areas. So, and they want a plan to see how Thai Airways will improve its finances. And this has been something that they've been going through. Now, the airline is looking to get a loan of over 50 billion baht, 54 billion baht to be specific. But this has also now been reported to be around 58.1 on Reuters. And should it get it, that's gonna be something. And this has become a highly political issue because of the major stake that the Thai government has in Thai Airways, specifically the 51% with the Thai ministry, along with other stakes held by Thai government owned funders. And this has created a situation where now there's a debate in Thailand related to should they implement a rescue package for the airline that is government funded. And this is a mixed bag and a highly political situation, to say the least. So in Reuters, we have some quotes here. I'm not going to go over it. They want, basically, the Thai citizens and the government want a full in-depth plan of how they're going to recover the funding, as well as to recover for very much the status and improve the financial situation of Thai Airways. Now, as Thai Airways is working on the rehabilitation plan, the Thai government is gonna be implementing and starting up some bankruptcy proceedings in Thai court. So this is the latest development. This just came out yesterday, and this is part of a plan to really facilitate the rehabilitation proceedings, both business-wise and legal-wise. And this is actually under Thai law. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not, and especially business law. So take this art report and actually just make sure that verify my information if I'm wrong here. And especially this news article, under Thai law, creditors, debtors, and state agencies can initiate rehabilitation proceedings. So this is one of the first steps that has already been taken, though. Now, this is a situation where Thai Airways is either gonna survive this, and they have been surviving their financial situation for a long time now. They've been really heavily in debt for a long time and continue to operate even with their financial burdens. And they have lost a lot of ground, basically, in a highly competitive market. They have not been able to capitalize on a lot of opportunities. And for some, this has been, like, at this point, the question of whether Thai Airways should be funded is a highly political but also a very sensitive issue, especially for those who have a major stake, such as the Thai Airways Union, and also the businesses who have made ties to the functions of Thai Airways, as well as the tourism industry of Thailand. Though the argument could also be made that there are much better economic economic benefits from other airlines as well. AirAsia, who has their presence, as well as Thai Lion Air, other airlines that are starting up in Thailand, and whether the age of and one of those and Thai Airways is one of those legacy carriers with a long legacy there. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they play out. But I think business wise, not looking so good for Thai Airways. And this is something that we need to keep watch on. Now, there's other videos that I've mentioned about Thai Airways in the past related to the Save TG campaign. I will be linking those in the description below. So feel free to take a look at that after this video for a more in-depth focused view of Thai Airways. And I might do another video in the future related to this situation and the latest developments on a more research basis. So the next country I will be going to is the Philippines, and right now all flights have been suspended since March, late March, first with the domestic and later the international flights. And right now all the major carriers, because of the modified enhanced community quarantine, the declaration has been made to extend it until May 31st. So all flights in the Philippines, very much because of the operations are based in Manila for these three base carriers, Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific, and Philippines AirAsia. No flights are operating so far, commercial flights now, except for the repatriation and cargo flights. So here's Philippine Airlines, for example. Now, Philippine Airlines is a unique situation. They've gone beyond the confirmation of the cancellation of flights. Now, Philippine Airlines is operating repatriation flights, but for the most part, again, no operations for commercial flights. Even though for those areas that have seen a reduction of quarantine measures. But here's where it really gets interesting, that they are looking to develop a domestic operations hub more from Davao. So they mentioned cities here like Iloilo, Siargao, and General Santos, who I believe I know Iloilo for sure has Easter regulations, and other parts of Mindanao. And this is going to be something to take a look at. And I think promising news that quarantine measures are being restricted, but for the most part still no end in sight. And I think the earliest right now, no indication right now that flights will resume by June 1. There has been several announcements and plans related by the airlines, but so far nothing solid right now. Now, if flights are resumed, Philippine Airlines here, for example, they are going to be opening up a reduced number on most of the domestic routes, and there is no indication of what routes these will be, but I believe these will be the trunk routes going to Cebu, Davao, Iloilo maybe, and Bacolod also. Also, now I'm not sure about like maybe Bohol maybe, but likely these are going to be like the high business routes that they're going to go to. Now, international routes, I would assume Tokyo, Hong Kong, Singapore. Now, this is going to be heavily dependent on the government restrictions on other countries, so that's going to be something to keep a look at. And we are now waiting on the future list of flights and routes. So stay tuned for that. This is going to be a recurring theme, I believe, for this. And also, as a matter of fact, I want to bring this up because we are partnered with Aviation Updates Philippines for those updates related to the Philippines and the aviation scene related to the COVID-19 pandemic. You should take a look at it. The website is auphilippines.com. Make sure to take a look at it also and visit the site and for those latest updates, especially if you're interested in the aviation and travel scene in the Philippines specifically. So partners, content partner, feel free to take a look at it and visit their site. Now the next airline I'm going to go to actually made a major headlines is Emirates. Emirates will be resuming flights to 9 destinations in Europe, North America, and Australia. And this is going to be good for those who are in Australia or Europe and looking for those kangaroo route and travel. So the select cities that will be seeing flights resumed by Emirates on May 21 will be London, Heathrow, Frankfurt, Paris, Milan, Madrid, Chicago, Toronto, and Sydney, as well as Melbourne. And this is subject to government approvals. And regulations, and this could change, though likely we could see this proceeding forward. And the very good news for those who are in those areas and requiring travel, and those who need to get home between those areas. Now, Emirates has implemented and announced that their measures of containing the virus. So they have their policies to personal protective equipment among the social distancing and health checks at the airport, at Dubai airport. Also, they are gonna be reducing in-flight services, so no magazines and print materials, and limited food service, as well as in-flight entertainment, I believe, from what I heard. And cabin baggage, hand carry bags specifically, will not be allowed. You have to check that in, and you're only going to be allowed to, and read it here, cabin baggage have to be checked in. Customers can only bring essential items such as laptop, handbag, briefcase, or baby items on board. So there you go. That's the latest updates with Emirates. Now, after that, this is another airline that I've mentioned in the past. Asiana, I mentioned them in the previous episode on May 12th, but they, since then, the next day actually, they updated their schedules. They'll open up more flights now, and they're going to be reopening routes to China and other parts in Asia, and as well as increasing flights to select cities such as the Philippines, Manila. We'll see more flights to Singapore, Phnom Penh. They'll be opening up flights to Frankfurt, more flights to Frankfurt, Germany, their only European destination. So among the destinations that in China, especially, China will be the big region that will see Asiana's reopened flights. So Guangzhou, Incheon, Gwangju, 4 times weekly, Dalian twice weekly, Nanjing June 1. So again, like, all these flights are starting on June 1, and we'll see daily services actually to Beijing and Shanghai from Seoul. On this listing so far, international services from Seoul Gimpo and Busan will not be operated. There's also other rescue operations, so they're still proceeding with the rescue flights to Cebu, Cebu Incheon, and Cebu Bangkok. In addition to flights going the Bangkok flights 3 times a week. Manila, again, being more specific, 3 times to 4 times starting June 1. And Phnom Penh, same deal there. In the US and North America, Asiana will be flying daily flights to New York and Los Angeles, and have a 3 times weekly flight to San Francisco. So that's the latest updates. And for the complete listing, I encourage you to take a look at the Asiana notice page. They have a dedicated, like most of these airlines have dedicated notice pages for the COVID-19 outbreak situation and what needs to be done. So feel free to take a look at that as well. I encourage you to actually to look at those information as well if you're interested. Now, the next airline I will be discussing will be United Airlines. And United Airlines, specifically with their operations for June and July from its Pacific Island hub of Guam. And this is an essential connection point for the islands of Micronesia in the Western Pacific. They will be operating flights between Guam and Honolulu, Hawaii. That's an essential route, I believe. And also Guam and Saipan, and Guam and Tokyo Narita will see twice weekly services. And they have announced schedules for flights to Palau and Yap. Now, another interesting route here is the Island Hopper, which is an essential link for the Micronesian islands between Guam and Honolulu. According to this report, Island Hopper will be operating on select days subject to quarantine regulations. Now, I'm not sure what regulations they mean, so I think that's something that I'll be looking into later on. What kind of things that they're going to be doing, and depending on, maybe I'm assuming that this is going to be dependent on the governments of those islands, and there's likely a chance some of these islands could be skipped on the routes, which would otherwise see the aircraft landing at. And normally this flight operates only 3 or 4 times a week, so not a very frequent flight at all. And they might have to overfly certain places for this time being. Now, the last airline I'm going to be highlighting will be Air Macau. The main carrier for the city of Macau, the one of the territories and self-governing regions of China, and they have our this is actually wait this is actually their flights that they're going on with. So we'll see flights to China and schedules. So you see twice or four times weekly flights, three, and you also have flights to Taiwan and Japan. So Tokyo, Narita, Osaka, Bangkok, and Seoul. These are the and I believe other flights of their network have been suspended for the time being. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the latest updates related to the aviation and travel scene for this week, March 19. March 19, May 19. I'm sorry, get my months confused sometimes. Promising news with the airlines in South Korea, like Asiana, Korean Air, and Asiana are increasing flights. Emirates is opening up new routes. The reopening routes that to help those travelers, transcontinental travelers. Situation is in the Philippines still very dependent on the restrictions being placed by the government. Hopefully things improve, but right now airlines are playing it safe and the government is playing it safe. Then you also have the Thai Airways situation that we just have to watch for. So this has been the latest updates. If you want to get more of these updates and other aviation and travel related content from the Asia Pacific region, for the focus of the region, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel Flights in Asia. Also, if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Flights in Asia. Have a great day.